Welcome to On the Verge. This is Zach Sped, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we got a lot of news to get to, including the hiring of Matt Borg-Salty and Ryan Fuller as the new co-hitting coaches at the major league level for the Orioles. We'll also talk about Cedric Mullins winning the Silver Slugger Award, Ryan Mountcastle not being named a finalist for American League Rookie of the Year Award, the latest news about Heston Kjerstad, and more will be on tonight's episode. But first, On the Verge is brought to you courtesy of Mercer Floor and Home Carpet One. Mercer is a third-generation family business that was established in 1959 and is located on Main Street in beautiful, historic downtown Westminster, Maryland. For all of your flooring needs, think Mercer. So we'll start off with really the big news of the week and what I suspect will be one of the bigger stories of the offseason for the Orioles, which is the announced hiring of Matt Borg-Salty and Ryan Fuller as the co-hitting coaches at the major league level for the Orioles. Fuller was the hitting coach at Double-A Bowie last year and also served as the full season minor league hitting coordinator. Borg-Salty, meanwhile, is joining the Orioles from the Twins organization, where he had spent the last several years as a minor league hitting coach. Most recently was the Triple-A St. Paul Saints. This move really does represent kind of a step further in that analytical direction that the Orioles as an organization have been moving in. Fuller and Borg-Salty are younger guys. Neither has played in the major leagues. In fact, Borg-Salty did not have professional playing experience. But both guys are heavy into analytics, and that's something the Orioles have really been emphasizing at the minor league level. So they will take over the hitting coach role next year for Don Long, who parted ways with the Orioles after the 2021 season. I'll start with Nick on this. Just kind of your thoughts on this hiring, especially with Fuller moving up, and what it means for the Orioles.
I think it's an awesome move. I know Bob called it. We got that vibe from this whole thing when we talked about him, when we talked to him, not about him. When we talked to him down in Bowie, I mean, I could sit there and just listen to him for hours and hours. I just want to listen to this guy talk about hitting. And we only talked to him for about 15 minutes or so, but you can tell how invested he was in this organization. We saw all the success that these Bowie hitters had. And the guys like Jordan Westberg did have a little bit of a learning curve, but Kyle Stowers and a lot of other hitters just didn't miss a beat when they went from high A to Double-A. And I think that's going to be the case in the major leagues as well, because, something that Ryan Fuller talked about was that how still in touch he was with everybody in this organization, at all levels. He's every day texting guys, calling guys. He's helping not just guys at Bowie, but he was helping the hitters at all levels. So he's familiar with everyone in this organization. Hopefully we see a lot more of these younger prospects reach the major leagues this year, guys that have already worked with Fuller. So I think it's going to be a good move. Both guys are younger. I think they're both, 30, 31 years old. So yeah, both younger than me. So just another example, just another shot at how old I'm getting, which is great to see. But yeah, I think this is a really good move. And I think Orioles fans are going to see dividends pay off pretty early next season.
Yeah, I guess they needed two guys combined to add up to Don Long's age from last year. So, no, I think this means that all the coaches are going to be lining up to talk to us live in person next year, because we bring good things come after you talk to us. Ryan Fuller, great. You could, like Nick said, you talk to him for 15, 20 minutes, and you can just tell this guy it just has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to hitting and teaching hitting. And I think it means that the Orioles consider what he was doing a success, and I think that means that they think they can bring that up to the major league level and still have it translate across all levels. Great stuff.
Well, I think that's really going to be the key, is having it translate across all levels, because we can see hitters, put this work in at the higher levels of the minor leagues, get to the majors and maybe be taught something a little bit different. And all of a sudden, what they learn in the minors goes out the window a little bit. And this philosophy that you're working on with them as they develop isn't really being carried out in major leagues. So I think that Fuller's knowledge of the organization, the way that he was able to stay on top of how players outside of Bowie were developing last year, that was a good point that Nick brought up. I think it's really going to be crucial to this role. And I think Borg-Salty, I've been trying to learn more about him just in the last few hours since this news came out, but it seems like he's the kind of guy that fits into this mold as well.
Yeah, I think I saw that AAA for the Twins, they were an upper third of all the offensive categories, kind of just like Fuller was with Double-A Bowie. So I'm sure, they talked to him and he's on the same page. And I like that it's just going to be consistency for these guys from the bottom to the top. Don't don't have to switch what they're learning at every step.
Yeah, I mean, he worked with Adley Rutschman all year, and you're not going to convince me that Adley Rutschman is not the starting catcher on the opening day roster. I don't care about the CBA stuff. He's going to be the opening day catcher. At least he better be for fans' sake. I know fans are going to lose it if he's not the opening day catcher. But, I mean, you bring a hitting coach like Ryan Fuller up. You bring someone like Adley Rutschman behind the plate to work the pitchers up. And hopefully he's working with Michael Bowens and Kyle Bradishes and guys he's familiar with. I think you're starting to see the pieces be put into place here where we're not talking about a contending team, but I know our colleagues over at the warehouse and Chris Stoner and Matt Corey and Stephen Loftus, I know they all mentioned a lot about, next year you're looking at hopefully around 70 wins for this Orioles team. I could definitely see that. And you're starting to see a lot of the pieces move into the right direction for that to happen. Of course, we still have free agency to go and a 40-man roster at 20-something guys. But I mean, the back end stuff I think is working there. So a great hire. And yeah, we'll learn more about this other guy too at the same time. But young guys, analytically driven, it's all working out.
Yeah, I think it means they're putting in the guys, not just a stopgap. I mean, I think now we're getting to the point where they're putting in the guys that they want to see in these positions for a long term, for the long time.
Well, and if you look in the next few years, are going to be critical because you've got not just Rutzman probably coming up, hopefully on opening day next year, but then you're probably going to have Kyle Stowers not too far behind him. Jordan Westberg and Gunnar Henderson, we know, are pushing for the major leagues. I think it's possible that we see Westberg sometime in the second half next year. Taron Vavra is another one we know Ryan Fuller is very high on that I think we could expect to see in the majors next year. So there's a lot of players that could benefit from this. And the other thing that I think is good about the timing is that the players who are on the roster now, who have been in the major leagues for a few years, probably aren't too settled in yet to feel like they're being sold something completely new. And hopefully some of them are analytically inclined as is and can adapt because, and we're going to talk about Cedric Mullins in a little bit there. That's one big success story we saw under Don Long. So now it's going to be, can Ryan Fuller and Matt Borg-Salty get a little bit more out of Austin Hayes? Can they get a little bit more out of Ryan Mountcastle? So it's going to be interesting to see how they work with those guys too.
Yeah, I was going to bring that point up later on when we talk about Cedric Mullins as well. I'd want to know, I don't know off the top of my head, how many of those instructors like Ryan Fuller were at the alternate site in 2020? I'm not sure off the top. I don't remember. But that would be interesting to know, what was that process like to get Cedric Mullins to where he is now, or what we saw this version of Cedric Mullins. That I'm interested to know that who deserves a lot of that credit there. But yeah, this is kind of, you talk about just that camaraderie there, and you have someone like Adley Rutschman as well. He can vouch for, if you have someone like Austin Hayes who maybe didn't get to work with him as well, or we don't know how much those major league hitters were working with a guy like Fuller. But if it's not that much, and if they may be just a little bit hesitant or worried about who is this guy, what does he bring in to us, you have a guy like Adley Rutschman who can come up and say, I vouch for this guy. This is what he did for me. And I think that's going to go a long way. And a lot of the other players on the major league roster taking a seat and listening to him.
Yeah, and even if they're hesitant to start, I think all it's going to take is one or two conversations with him, and I think they'll get on board. And at the very least, I don't think he's going to screw anybody up or make a regression for Cedric Mullins. I mean, I think what he does is going to be good. It should improve a bunch of these guys, if anything.
Yeah, I agree. So we'll move on now to a listener question. This is from Ben in our Patreon group. How will proposed changes to the collective bargaining agreement, like a salary floor and limiting service time manipulation, impact the Orioles? And I'll let Bob start with this one.
Well, Nick will be right in his prediction that Adley Rutschman will be the opening day starting catcher. And I think maybe you could see Grayson Rodriguez in the starting rotation if that is the case. But yeah, I think it would be very good for the game of baseball in general, and especially the Orioles with all of our young guys and prospects coming up. I think it just means there's no reason to delay them. You can let them come up a little bit sooner than you would normally. Let them take their lumps, but they're still developing just at the major league level. And I think it maybe gets them up to speed even faster. So hopefully that is what happens in the next month or so.
Yeah, it would be great for the game of baseball, but I'm just concerned. I said this before. I think when you see things like the housing announcement and anything else that comes along, I'm wondering if that's Major League Baseball kind of softening the blow here. We don't know. You've heard tidbits of it's getting ugly behind the scenes, and we're probably not talking about missing baseball next year or a delay in the baseball season, but this winter is not going to be pretty. And so each side seems to have dug in pretty tightly. But yeah, I think that would be great because I would much rather see Grayson Rodriguez is the type of pitcher that I think he's going to learn a lot more by just going ahead and learning at the major league level than in AAA, to be totally honest. But yeah, as far as like a salary floor and ceiling, like if that's implemented, I don't really think that I don't see that happening. But like a salary floor, yeah, it forced the Orioles to spend more money, but I think instead of like giving Andrelton Simmons $3 million next year, like that could mean like they're going to give Andrelton Simmons like $10 million next year. I don't think it changes what type of free agent they go after if that were to change things immediately.
Yeah, I forgot to answer that part of the question. And Sim Contribute says, wouldn't floor force the O's to sign mediocre players for more money? Excuse me. Yeah, probably would, which is good for the players, but or maybe more likely we'd be like, hey, we'll take off this $20 million player off your hands if you throw in this prospect, and maybe see some more of that kind of stuff. But I don't think it would really change Elias's game plan. I think it would just he would just cost him more to do it.
Yeah, I don't think it would change things significantly either. The salary floor is really one of the more complicated parts of this whole discussion right now because, on one hand, it seems like it's a thing that players are asking for because it's going to now force teams to spend money. It's not going to make tanking as financially cheap as it is right now. But then at the same time, what a lot of reports are suggesting is that that's going to be tied to possibly a lower luxury tax threshold, which the players don't want. So I don't know that we're going to end up seeing a salary floor, but if it were to go into effect in some way, shape, or form, it would obviously force the Orioles to spend more. And I do think that what you'd see, at least for the next year or so, would be spending more money on mediocre players, or like Bob said, taking on more salary in trades to hopefully get a prospect back.
Yeah. And that would be, there are going to be measures put in place to prevent teams like the Orioles doing this again, or teams rebuilding in this dramatic fashion. I feel pretty certain in that. But at the same time, like, John Muley mentioned that last week, that he's surprised that we haven't seen the Orioles in terms of making a trading for that high, salary guy and basically buying a prospect in this type of deal. Honestly, like that would make the Orioles, slightly more competitive. Like, yeah, you could still rebuild, but if you're trading, I don't know if this is going to be the situation anymore, but like the Padres, I always mention the Padres. It's easy for me to understand what's going on over there. But taking on a guy like Will Myers and his contract, that's going to make the Orioles a lot better while you get one of their a pretty good prospect from San Diego. So I think that would help the situation. But again, I feel like it's just kind of like moving pieces around and not actually like helping anything in the long run. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that alone is going to change the landscape when it comes to competitiveness. It's going to take a lot more than that to really figure that out. But hopefully the Orioles, if they do put an end to tanking, will be the last successful version of that. We'll see.
So we'll talk now about awards. As Cedric Mullins won the Silver Slugger Award this year. Congratulations to him after the first 30-30 season in franchise history and the only 30-30 season in the major leagues in 2021. Mullins, the three of us had some hopes that there would be a little bit of a breakout there, a little bit more offense, but we did not see 30 homers and a Silver Slugger Award coming. And although center field had a lot of good contenders, and I think in the end the Gold Glove Award went to the right choice in Michael A. Taylor, you can rave about Mullins' defense all night in addition to his offense. So Silver Slugger doesn't tell the full story of how good Cedric Mullins was last year, but it is a really nice recognition to see. Mullins becomes the first Oriole since Mark Trumbo in 2016 to receive a Silver Slugger Award. So I'll start with Bob. This is obviously great news. Just what's your reaction to it?
Yeah, it's great to see. Congrats to Cedric for just continued recognition for an awesome season. And yeah, like you said, he didn't make the Gold Glove finalist, but he was up there in outs above average. I think he was fourth best in the outfield as far as chasing balls down, according to Baseball Savant. So to go along with that, his 30-30 season, he's one of the best hitting outfielders in baseball last year, and there's no doubt about that.
Yeah. I don't have anything new to say that hasn't already been said about Mullins, but I think this is just another example of like what this organization is capable of in terms of development. It's cool to see Zach Watson come out of nowhere with this power, a non-top 30 prospect. It's great to see Kyle Stowers put himself into the conversation. Is he going to be a starting outfielder on this roster next year? But the big question is, can these guys do it at the major league level? Obviously, and that's a fair question about any prospect. But the Orioles were able to take Cedric Mullins, and we saw him, like, he couldn't hit major league pitching 2 years ago. He couldn't even hit AAA pitching. That was probably because of his experience in the major leagues. But it's so bad, he gets moved back to AA again. That story's been well documented. But this guy who couldn't touch upper level pitching, and now he was in the MVP conversation this year, which is just fantastic. I mean, so like, can this organization develop guys at the major league level? I think Cedric Mullins is your example A, and Ryan Mountcastle, someone we're going to talk about in a minute, is example B. 2 homegrown prospects turned major league contributors who I think are on track, at least, to be successful major league starters for a long, long time in this organization.
Yeah, they basically rebuilt Mullins from the ground up, and yeah, you knew he could steal 30 bases, but I don't think anyone knew he could hit 30 home runs, even with the juice ball. So, just a great story altogether.
Well, and I think that part of this goes back to him abandoning switch hitting. I think that was a big development for him, and although I had hopes that he was going to be a little bit better hitter because of that, because going back to the minor leagues, his platoon splits had always been really glaring, and they had always suggested he was a better hitter from the left side of the plate. I just didn't necessarily think he was going to tap into this power the way that he did.
Yeah, and he was not even like, I mean, he was a decent prospect, as far as Orioles prospects goes, but he wasn't like anywhere near a top 100 in baseball type prospect, and he's turned into this. So what are they going to do with the Adley Rutschmans of the world who are at the tip top of the prospect list?
My only thing with Mullins and Mountcastle too, but with Mullins, like, I don't have an opinion here really, but for you guys watched a lot more of him than I did. Are either of you afraid of like a big regression next year, or do we think Cedric Mullins is maybe not a silver slugger every couple of years, but a solid major league regular for the next 5+ years?
I think there will probably be regression, but I'm not too scared of big regression. I don't think he's going to go back to 2019 version of himself. I'm not worried about that at all. I think he'll probably be like a 280 to 300 type hitter with 15, 20 home runs most season, 20 stolen bases. And as long as the defense is still there, I think that's plenty valuable. Just a 750 to 800 OPS in center field with good defense. I'll take that any day of the week.
Yeah, I don't see him having a 30-30 season again, but I don't think he's going to completely drop off either. So the power might come back a little bit, but I think he's got a lot of good years ahead of him, at least defensively in center field. And I think the he's now shown at the plate that he can hold his own in the lineup, which was always one of the concerns with him. I think he's going to hit well enough to hold that job down for the next several years. But fortunately, with the outfield depth the Orioles are building, they can make that situation interesting in just a couple of years if Colton Cowser or some of these other guys work out.
That's
a good point. Yeah.
That's going to be fun for me to watch. If Mullins is that guy of your future, and if Austin Hayes, I know there's more question about Austin Hayes, but if you have 2/3 of your outfield locked down, and you have so many outfielders in the system, this is where the trades are going to happen, and that's going to be a lot of fun to watch unfold over the next couple of years. But
yeah, I mean, if a guy like Cowser can push Mullins to a corner, like a left field, if his defense is good enough or something like that, that just makes your team even better. Or make Mullins or Cowser, whoever, expendable, then you can trade him for a big piece down the stretch one season.
We'll focus now on the Oriole that did not get an award, and in fact was not named a finalist for an award that some were expecting him to, and that was Ryan Mountcastle for American League Rookie of the Year. The players had voted him American League Rookie of the Year, but the official American League Rookie of the Year that the Baseball Writers Association votes on every year, Mountcastle did not finish in the top 3 and was not named a finalist for an award that went to Randy Arozarena of the Rays. So depending on how you were analyzing Mountcastle's season, I think this news either comes as a big surprise or not a big surprise at all, because you could either take away the fact that he was not a good defender in the outfield, didn't draw a lot of walks, had a WAR that by the baseball reference version was below a full win, and just say he's a guy that happened to hit a lot of home runs. Or you could say he led all rookies in home runs this year. How does a guy that hits that well, especially the way he hit over the last few months, not finish in the top 3, especially in a year where there didn't seem to be a clear-cut favorite coming up to the announcement of the award on Monday night? So Nick, I'll start with you on this one. When Mountcastle was not named a finalist, were you at all surprised?
I mean, like, if awards are your thing and you like following this stuff, like that's great. But like, I didn't have any energy to like care about if he was a finalist or not. To be totally honest, like I don't really pay attention to these award stuff. I mean, whether or not Mountcastle is a Rookie of the Year winner or even a finalist, I don't think that has no impact on his future as a regular in this lineup. I think the writers that have a vote, how many of them actually even watched Ryan Mountcastle play this year? Other than any Orioles guys, I think we heard that there were 2 Orioles player or writers who had votes. So, how does it really matter what the Oakland A's beat writer thinks about Ryan Mountcastle? Like, I don't really care, to be totally honest. So the players voted him Rookie of the Year, and I think his peers voting him as a player or Rookie of the Year means a whole lot more to him than what some beat writers have to think. So, not shocked completely, because I guess the game is moving towards the more war. Everything is war based. You even see now this proposal of paying free agents based on their war value, which is absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, if you do look at the war, Ryan Mountcastle isn't that high on the list, so of course that's going to knock him down. So I'm not surprised, but it does surprise me considering like so many of these beat writers are like dusty old guys that like he leads the league in home runs, that would count for something, but it obviously didn't. But this has no impact on his future. He's a great player. We know that. I think that's all that matters.
Yeah, for me, these awards are cool. It's nice to see them get recognition, but at the same time, and just because he didn't get the award or even get in the top 3 finalists, it's not like it makes him a worse player because of that. So he's still going to be the same player that he was if he won the award. So that's good for the Orioles to have him. He's just a sleeper now. He's a dark horse. People don't know about him. But and it was also just a really deep. There was no standout obvious winner in the AL, but it was a pretty deep field. I think there were 5 or 6 guys that could justifiably be picked as the top 3 finalists. The 2 Rays guys, Luis Garcia, Adolis Garcia, who it seemed like it was between him and Mountcastle for a while there to get the award, and neither of them were the finalists. So just a weird year overall, but doesn't really bother me either way. But I understand Orioles fans, they want the recognition from their own guys, and that's cool that they're fighting for him. But for me, it doesn't really bother me either way.
In a way, I was kind of happy to see that people were upset because it shows that the fans still care and they recognize that this is someone that is going to be, a big part of the Orioles' future. So they want him to get that recognition. But it doesn't really change my perception of Mountcastle as a player. I still feel like he's a guy that has the potential to be a middle of the order bat in this lineup for several years. I think the biggest things we learned about him this year are, number one, that power is going to play to major league level, and that his bat has the potential to get even better. And number 2, that he's not an outfielder at the major league level. But he looks like now he's maybe settling into first base a little bit, and is going to turn out to be, hopefully at least an above average defensive first baseman. But he really did, show some strides this year with the bat. I do want to throw this out there, though, because regardless of what stats you looked at, whether you want to look at WAR or you want to look at the traditional metrics like batting average, you can come away with the same feeling, which is that a bad first month probably cost Ryan Mountcastle a lot of Rookie of the Year votes. Is that fair in this race, or is that just kind of part of the game? And, unfortunately, his April was just so bad that it dragged the rest of his numbers down a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, baseball is just a game of streaks and ups and downs, and that's just the way it turned out. He got off to a cold start, but he was red hot. I think he won Player of the Week at least one time. So, I don't think that really matters much at the end of the day. But maybe if people were paying attention early and then just kind of forgot about the Orioles, then yeah, that might have affected it. I think the real crime is Ramon Urias didn't get top 3. He's much more WAR than Ryan Mountcastle. So, where's the outrage?
Yeah, I mean I think that does have a lot to play in it, because if you're off to that slow start when everybody's paying attention and everyone's fair game, anyone can win this division, right? And then the Orioles get as bad as they are, and so no one, not even Orioles fans, really paying attention to the Orioles. So it's hard for writers to pay attention to Ryan Mountcastle this season. But I look at Ryan Mountcastle and say, like, he walks now. He walked a good amount. He showed an improvement in that area, and that was, other than the defense, it was always the walks. The guy doesn't walk. Well, he does that. Like Zach said, the power's going to play at the major league level. He has found a home at first base, I think. And I thought, watching him learn the position in Norfolk, that he caught on pretty quickly. and that I think he can be a pretty fine first baseman for years to come. And so I think he has a defensive home that he's going to improve on. He walks, he's got power, he's shown growth throughout the year. And so I think this is a big player development win for the Orioles. And we as fans know what we have in Ryan Mountcastle. He's here. He's this first baseman of the future. So I think it's a win. It's a win for him. And I'm sure he probably, we don't know Ryan Mountcastle. He probably wants the hardware. Like, I've got hardware sitting right next to me, big Coach of the Year plaques over here that if it was up to me, they'd be sitting on my mantle over my fireplace in the living room. So everybody knows they're walking to a house of greatness. But high school track coach over here. But but at the end of the day, like, the guy hits major league pitching, he hits it well. And I think that's what's most important. And his peers know that he's pretty darn good. So
yeah, maybe he gets a little bit less in arbitration because he didn't get a top 3 finalist. But yeah, it's not the end of the world.
Nick, are you going to redesign your background and put these awards up there so that everybody can see them when we live stream the show on social media?
I should. I've been wanting to redo this because I got lots of bobbleheads and cards and memorabilia and everything, but I'll make sure the trophies are right here so everybody can know.
Well, just to put Mountcastle's full results into context, he picked up 2 second-place votes and 4 third-place votes. The second-place votes came from Peter Schmuck, former Baltimore Sun writer who was there for a long time and is part of the Baltimore chapter, and Jen McCafferty of The Athletic, who is part of the Boston chapter of the Baseball Writers Association. Joe Trezza, who writes for the Orioles over at MLB.com, was one of the writers to put Mountcastle third, as well as a writer in Kansas City, a writer in San Francisco, and then Mark Tompkin, who covers the Rays for the Tampa Bay Times. So not everyone that voted for Mountcastle comes from the American League East City. So just thought that was worth throwing out there because I thought it was going to be, skewed a little bit more towards the teams that saw Mountcastle regularly this year. But Mountcastle picking up votes from writers that presumably cover the Royals and the A's. So it was not just an AL East trend.
Yeah, that's good to see. I mean, Mountcastle's just this rare prospect that actually succeeded, and he's got a high floor and a pretty high ceiling. Defensively, he'll never be on the high end of the spectrum, but we know he can hit, and if he can start walking, it's lights out for the American League East.
I'm never reading Joe Trezza again. Third place? Come on. No, I'm I'm still reading you, Joe. But
Willie Yan and all.
Oh yeah, Willie Yan. Oh, don't get me started. Let's move on.
All right, so we got another listener question here, and this is from Vivek. He posted this in our Patreon chat. Given the free agent signing so far, is it telling of the price for quality starting pitching and what the absolute max contract for the Orioles might offer for 2022? So we have seen some pitchers sign recently. Andrew Haney going to the Dodgers was really the first big move of the offseason. That seemed like the type of pitcher the Orioles could pursue, but didn't. So I just want to get your guys' thoughts on this, which is really, do the Orioles start getting in the starting pitching market, and what might it look like in terms of years and contract?
They're not going to sign Eduardo Rodriguez type of deal for 5 years and $80 million. Even though I think that's a pretty fair deal all around for Detroit and for him himself. But I think they're just going to wait it out and see who's left at the end of the day and who's willing to sign for as low as money as possible. As boring as that is, and not what Orioles fans want to hear. I just think that's the reality right now. But I think you're looking at like a Michael Pineda for like 2 years, $12 million, that type of deal at the most, and maybe a couple guys at 1 year, $4 or $5 million.
Yeah, I would love to have Michael Pineda for that money. And you have to wonder. I don't think he's got a World Series yet. I don't know. He's an older guy, injuries, so he might be looking to go to a contender as well. But I think that's the biggest issue is, even if the Orioles do want to throw a few bones a pitcher's way and pay up just a little bit, a 212, a 215 or something for a guy, like, are they going to be able to convince those pitchers to come to this organization knowing that, next year probably isn't going to be that great again? Even though maybe you can promise them, yeah, you're going to be the number 2 guy on this team behind a John Means. You might even be the number 1 on this roster. Who knows? But I don't think – I'm not anticipating any signings. I honestly wouldn't be shocked if it's just barely a step above a Matt Harvey deal next year. I know there was some talk, but I just don't see it shaping out in the Orioles' favor this offseason, unfortunately.
Well, at least they could say, come here, pitch good for 15 starts, and we'll trade you to a contender, and then you can get your World Series ring that way.
Yeah, that would probably be the selling point on 1 year deal is, by the All-Star break, who are a little bit after, you're going to be pitching for a contender as long as you're healthy and making your starts every 5 days. I think that if the Orioles get into the pitching market, it's going to be late in the offseason. Kind of like Bob mentioned, if there is someone sitting there right before spring training starts as a good fit that could be had for, a low-cost 1 year major league contract, I would expect the Orioles to make a move then. But I feel like between now, probably between now and when the current CBA expires, but then, maybe even really more between now and the beginning of February, it's going to be pretty quiet as far as that's concerned. I feel like, and this is a speculation, I feel like if the Orioles make any sort of notable move between now and then, as far as free agents go, it's going to be for a shortstop and not a pitcher.
Or it'll be a trade and not a free agent signing. I could see Elias loves to make his November trades, so we could see that. But yeah, I don't think maybe a backup catcher, but still, that's someone you can just grab at the end of the offseason. So I just don't think we're in a position right now where, we have to rush and sign someone to steal them away from anybody else.
Yeah, and you have so many pitchers as well. And I know like none of these guys performed well last year. And I know I don't want to watch a rotation where like Bruce Zimmerman is the number 2 either. But I think the Orioles are still high on a number of these guys like Keegan Aiken, Dean Kramer. They're going to want to give them another opportunity. Michael Baumann hopefully starts the year in the rotation. Like I think you have a lot of guys who the Orioles are going to want to get eyes on again next year. And so they're going to let them have those rotation spots. They're going to have to earn them, obviously, but they're going to get first crack at that rotation spot, I think. And that's why I think they're going to be more hesitant. If they do spend money, I do agree. It would be a shortstop. It may be a third baseman. It's going to be to bring in a good veteran backstop to pair with Adley that you might have to pay a little bit for. That's where the money's going to go. I don't think it's going to go to pitching this year. That's going to wait until they're ready to start contending a little harder, I think.
I got to get a Dean Kramer 2022 flag planted in my yard.
Start. You're going to get on the comeback hype train now, or
yeah, I got to order a jersey, Dean Kramer jersey, coming in the mail.
Just don't buy it from wherever you bought UCL Diaz's jersey from.
I know they don't take returns, unfortunately.
So some good news, which we talked about a little bit last week when we had John Mioli on. He gave some insight about it, and that is that Heston Kjerstad is working out down in Sarasota. The Orioles have been putting out a lot of content on social media showing Kjerstad taking batting practice. He also met with the media and I believe had his first interviews since he was initially drafted by the team to talk about sort of the way that he's worked himself back from myocarditis. And it's great to see. It's great to see him healthy. It's great to see him getting in baseball shape. And, we all hope, starting the year somewhere in 2022 healthy. So this is all positive news after really all season. It seemed like you would hear seems to be taking some steps forward, and then it would be, they're shutting him down or that there's been a mild scare and then wouldn't hear anything for a while. But now he seems to be working his way back to being in a lineup somewhere every day. So I'll start with Bob on this news, which is it's obviously great that Kjerstad seems to be recovering and is getting healthy. If he is full go for 2022, what would your expectations be for him?
I would expect him to start in Loe Delmarva, quickly move up as long as he's proved to be healthy and performing to Aberdeen, and then, hopefully just like Jordan Westburg, get a month or so in Bowie to set himself up for 2023. Maybe he can start in Bowie or AAA and then maybe get a taste of the big leagues at the end of 2023, but that's my best guess. But it's like you said, I feel like this guy's been in the organization for almost 18 months now, and I just don't even know who he is until I saw his first interview like a week or two ago. So it's really cool to see. Glad he transferred his powers to Kyle Stowers in the meantime, and can't wait to see him out there.
Yeah, I remember that was like like our family pandemic vacation that we like sheltered in place on the beach somewhere and I was watching the draft, and that was Heston Kjerstad, and that feels like forever ago. I think that would be the dream scenario there if that plays out. And I know Orioles fans are extremely anxious to see Kjerstad on the field. I am as well. But like I 100% agree with this pick still, especially after you watch Jordan Westburg and Kobe Mayo this season. Like those guys are in the system because we went Kjerstad with that first pick. Those guys are studs. Ideally, yeah, Kjerstad starts in Delmarva and has a Jordan Westberg path. But I think, like, I'm honestly not going to be worried at all if he has to spend a little bit more time in Delmarva, and maybe he only ends the year in Aberdeen with a month or so in Aberdeen. But he's a high floor prospect, so you're minimizing that risk there a bit when you take a high floor prospect like Kjerstad. We're not talking about an 18-year-old kid, this raw prospect who's now missed 2 extremely critical years of his development. Kjerstad just needs the at-bats. He needs the innings. You had John Mioli, who's mentioned, his signing scout mentioned how quickly he can put on weight and get back into shape. So that may not be an issue. It's just going to be about getting at-bats, getting plate appearances, getting his timing down. He's got that experience, but, I just think if Kjerstad needs more time to develop in Delmarva, like, I'm okay with that because we've seen the rise of, Kyle Stowers and Robert Newstrom. The organization is going to give Yusniel Diaz, whether we like it or not, one more opportunity. So, like, you have these guys that are going to get their shot first. You have Colton Cowser there as well, who's going to be a fast riser. There's so much outfield depth in the system. There's really no rush as there was when Kjerstad was drafted. Sure, we didn't have this depth. We didn't know Kyle Stowers was going to be this Kyle Stowers. We needed Kjerstad in the major leagues. I just think now there's so much depth in the upper levels of the minor leagues. It's okay if Kjerstad isn't rushed. He's not needed next year. So if it's late 2023, early 2024, as long as he's healthy and constantly moving in the right direction, I think it's going to be okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think that anything you can get out of him next year is good. And I'm fine if he has to spend a little bit more time in Delmarva, like Nick said. I thought that John Mioli brought up a really good point last week when he said that you don't need Kjerstad to be that guy that rises through the system quickly to be your everyday right fielder next year now because, and Nick touched on this too. Kyle Stowers had a big year. Robert Newstrom had a big year. And by the end of the week, might be on the 40-man roster. You can even throw guys like Zach Watson and Colton Cowser into that mix. So the pressure is off Kjerstad a little bit. I'll also say, too, although myocarditis is not entirely unprecedented, Eduardo Rodriguez came back from it this year and pitched fairly well for the Red Sox. This also isn't like, he tore an ACL or he tore a labrum in his shoulder and we kind of know what the recovery time is going to look like. This is just a lot different. So, admittedly, I don't know if that's going to affect the way the Orioles use him next year. Does that mean he maybe DHs a little bit more at the beginning of the year? I don't know. But if he can get in Delmarva's lineup on opening day and just be out there playing every day, hopefully hitting a lot of long home runs, I'll call that a win. And then, whatever happens with his timetable happens.
Yeah, and don't panic if he gets off to a slow start because he hasn't played in so long and it's his first professional season. And don't panic if he fades a little bit early at the end of the season and struggles just like Robert Newstrom kind of did. It's a long season after such a long break with such a serious illness. So let's just focus on May to August and we'll be happy.
For his sake, I hope he comes out of the gates hot and has a good year because it sounds like he was really bored without baseball in his life. So for his sake, I hope he's fully healthy. And yeah, I was going to bring that point up too. I'm glad you did, Bob, that end of the season, he could very well hit a wall late in the year. So I think as long as he comes out of the gates, okay. As long as there's progress being made, I'm cool with it. Again, if he has to spend all year in Delmarva, as long as he's making progress and the Orioles feel like he's still making progress, I'm fine with that as well. There's absolutely no rush with Kjerstad. We'll see how all this plays out. That health is first and foremost, and we know he's a full go, but let's see when he gets into like full game action 6 days a week, what's that going to do to his body? We don't know. Like you said, it worked for Eduardo Rodriguez. He was fine, but this is going to attack everybody differently. We don't know how his body's going to react as well. So health first, and I think we'll see Kjerstad up in the upper levels of the minor leagues and in the major leagues before too much longer.
And I'm fine with him getting a little bit of an extended look at Aberdeen. I can go watch him a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, hey, maybe he will make Ripken Stadium look small for once.
Yeah, he'll be the one that can hit the home runs there.
So we did want to also touch on some transaction news that we didn't have a lot of time to discuss last week, which is that the Orioles claimed right-handed pitcher Brian Baker off waivers from the Blue Jays. He is on the 40-man roster after that claim. Quick profile on Baker, 6'6", 245-pound right-hander who throws hard, got in the major leagues last year and pitched in just one inning of relief for the Blue Jays, spending most of the year at AAA Buffalo, where he put up pretty good numbers. This is someone who has also spent time in the Colorado Rockies system and had shown some promise there with increasing velocity leading up to the 2020 season. I'll just start with Bob on this. Baker seems to fit a type that Mike Elias has, which is big, hard-throwing right-hander that can give you an inning or two at a time out of the bullpen. Where do you think he fits into this team next year?
I think him and Felix Bautista are the Bash brothers, like the Mighty Ducks. I mean, these guys are giants on the mound, throwing high 90s and only give up like a hit every other inning or even less. So, yeah, I think it is a type that Elias seems to like, hard throwing, big, durable guy. Tyler Wells fits the same kind of mold. I think he's just an option for the bullpen. We'll see if he even makes it through the offseason on the 40-man roster. I mean, this is going to be a roster churn for the foreseeable future, but if he does, he's certainly a guy that I think can help you in the bullpen. It seemed like, as far as the Blue Jays go, it wasn't like he was a guy they didn't like. I think they just, had a little bit of roster crunch, a la the Rays do a lot of times. And I'm excited to see him pitch. He's a big guy with a big arm. So what's not to like there?
I really like this pickup. I mean, his AAA numbers were fantastic with Toronto. He's the fastball slider guy. He is older. I think he's getting ready to turn 27 like this month or next month, but he has options remaining. So, I'm sure the Orioles found that attractive, and it will be interesting to see, like Bob said, there's no guarantee that he sticks around. I think this is a guy that if you like him, you like the base there, you think he can contribute at the major league level, go ahead and claim him now, bring him into the organization, protect him for right now. And if you find someone better, then you find someone better. But, I think you look at his numbers, like the walks have always been an issue if you look at his past performance, but he improved on that this year by like 5-6 percentage points. Strikeout rate was still close to like 30%, what he's been putting up in the upper levels of the minor leagues. And it's like a very, DL Hall statistical profile. Like, yeah, the walks were up, but that whip was 0.85. Like, that's a really good whip for a guy who walks so many guys because he doesn't allow base hits, a lot of strikeouts. So, and it also seems like he can be a pretty animated guy on the mound, which I love. I love those guys that aren't afraid to show some attitude, on the mound. But I think I saw where he touched this a couple of years ago. He was touching like 101 in games. And now he's sitting around 93 to 95, hitting 98 this season. But big guy, sturdy guy. And if he can pound the strike zone and limit those walks, he could be an option for the Orioles.
Yeah, I think I saw he gave up 15 hits over like 31 innings or something like that. That's crazy.
Yeah, he's another option. And I think he's a good one because, of the way that his stuff plays and how well he pitched AAA last year. And, I don't think we're finished as far as turnover for the bullpen goes. I think we're going to see some other moves made there between now and when pitchers and catchers report. So Baker gives you another option, and that he's a guy that if nothing else can throw hard. And, with the waiver claim, there's really not significant downside. Yeah, if he doesn't work out, then you just try to outright him. And, Nick brought up a great point with him having options still. That gives you a lot more flexibility because let's say he does, make the opening day roster. You realize 6 weeks into the season he's not ready, and that there's pitchers in Norfolk who are better equipped to pitch in the major leagues right now than Baker. You can send him down and not have to worry about him being out of options. So that roster flexibility, I think, is really key.
Yeah, and we saw how many times we brought guys up and down in the bullpen last year. They just need any arm they can to finish the season. So, yeah, definitely doesn't hurt to be able to have that flexibility.
Did we talk about Hunter Harvey last week?
Actually, don't think we did.
No, because I think John mentioned it, but we didn't. Yeah, we didn't officially mark the end of the Hunter Harvey era.
Because I don't know, you guys can go for if we want to talk about Hunter Harvey, and give y'all's thoughts. But I was thinking when I thought of like Baker, and I was listening to, again, shout out to the Warehouse. I was listening to those guys early this morning, their episode from late last week, and fan favorite guest on the Verge. If you look at our download numbers, whenever Stephen Loftus is on, you guys flock to our episodes. But he kind of mentioned that if you take peak Hunter Harvey, you can find what, in his opinion, who he thinks peak Hunter Harvey is. You can find 5 or 6 guys on the cheap in free agency to replace that kind of production. And I got the sense like Baker is one of those guys who I think can give you the same type of production as long as he can limit those walks that Hunter Harvey is going to give you. That's if Hunter Harvey were to stay healthy in 2022 when he had almost a decade in this organization and he could not stay healthy. So I would not put my money. Like, I don't think this is another Yaz or Kevin Gausman situation in San Francisco. Although I know every Orioles fan is just waiting for that to happen. God knows what would happen if Hunter Harvey is healthy next year and is like one of the top relief pitchers in the National League. But I don't think this is that same scenario. And Baker is the guy who can come in and kind of help replace what you're going to get out of there. But I don't know what you guys thought about the Harvey situation.
I mean, they tried to sneak him through. It almost worked. He got to the San Francisco Giants, the very last team that could have claimed him. And I think it was a move worth trying, because if you can get him through, then he's in AAA and you can kind of not care as much about his health, or at least, it's not as much pressure on him to stay healthy. But yeah, I don't think we're losing that much, though. I mean, even when he's healthy, he's a guy. Yeah, he throws hard. I like his arm. I like his story. If he could come back, that would be great. But he's got a straight fastball and a decent slider. I mean, it's not like, yeah, he could be a decent bullpen reliever, but like you said, it's definitely guys you can pick up to easily replace that kind of production, especially since I think he's never pitched more than 15 innings in a major league season. So
Yeah, that type of arm is easy to replace out of the bullpen, and I think especially in a year where the Orioles probably have 4 or 5 right-handers that are up for the Rule 5 draft, that could probably give you a similar pitch mix. Not to say that they're guaranteed to be successful, but the profile just isn't that far off from what peak Hunter Harvey was. Now, you go back to peak Hunter Harvey, which was really, I guess, the end of the 2019 season. That was something to get excited about. It looks like we were maybe watching the next closer for the Orioles, but his problem just has been throughout his career that he can't stay healthy. And that's, if there's an organization that's going to unlock Hunter Harvey, it is going to be the Giants. I'll just throw that out there now. But if he's not healthy, it's not going to be a big loss to the Orioles at the end of the day. And I think even if we see some version of peak Hunter Harvey again, it's not going to be the type of pitcher that is impossible to replace. I think that it's just as likely that Dylan Tate could figure it out this year and be a better version of Dylan Tate than it is that Hunter Harvey could put together a healthy full season for the Giants.
yeah, I agree. And the Rays passed on him, and they work miracles with pitchers. They even took Sean Armstrong off our hands. So, yeah, if they pass on him, then I don't think we have much to worry about. But if, like you said, if anyone's going to get something out of him, probably be the Giants. But
So the Mad Behemoth has a question for us here from YouTube. What are the odds Harvey is more productive than, say, Blaine Knight? Now, Knight is Rule 5 eligible this offseason. He's one of those guys that seems to be on the bubble of being protected with a 40-man roster spot. So, interesting question, because they kind of are similar pitchers.
yeah, they do kind of have, similar profiles, especially if Knight's working short stints, he might be able to get that fastball up even a little bit higher. He's got that nice slider. So, yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I mean, you could easily see Blaine Knight putting up similar numbers, which Harvey had like a mid-4 ERA in his time that he was in the major league. So I could see Knight being able to do that, and I definitely think he'll be more likely to stay healthy over that stretch of time. But honestly, I'd rather protect the Nick Vespi, Felix Bautista, and roll with them, see what they can give us.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's hard because Blaine Knight did really kind of fall apart there in AAA, and we talked about maybe theories as to why that might have happened. But yeah, Knight doesn't have the velo, but that slider is an impressive slider that a lot of people really love. So maybe, and he doesn't have the injury history. Ofelke Peralta even doesn't have the injury history, and maybe if you say, like, let's just focus and make you a 2-pitch pitcher, will that make his pitches a little bit better? I don't know. Could he be more productive than Hunter Harvey? I mean, Peralta's got the velo. He could throw at 98, 99, even 100 miles an hour in a 1-inning stint. And yeah, Vespi's a fastball slider guy, and Jonathan Mayo was all over it in the Fall Stars game broadcast. He said, look, this is a lefty. And even, maybe he profiles best just going up against lefties as that lefty-lefty matchup guy, which, with the 3-out rule kind of, negates that a little bit. But that's a guy who can probably stick in the major leagues, and that slider is good enough. So that's the pitch that he's going to rely on. And so, yeah, I think I'd rather roll the dice on a Nick Vespi or even a Blaine Knight instead of rolling with Hunter Harvey, because those other guys don't have the injury concerns. Again, almost like a decade Harvey was in this system. And to be fair, like every single year, he was a top 30 prospect for a reason. So like, I get why people would be, upset or frustrated as to why a team like the Orioles are risking losing Hunter Harvey by trying to sneak him through waivers. But at the same time, like 10 years, come on, man.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that was putting icy hot on his arm before he warmed up in the bullpen every single time. So, I mean, even if he is able to stay healthy, that's a lot of damage that's been done there. I don't know how much is reversible.
So the Rule 5 talk that we've had here a lot lately is going to kind of come to a head at the end of the week, as the Orioles will have to decide which players they are going to protect from the draft. That deadline is Friday. I have a new piece up over at BaltimoreSportsAndLife.com that breaks down the cases of actually over a dozen players who are Rule 5 eligible this offseason. That's not the entire list of Rule 5 eligible players, but it's the ones who seem to be at least worthy of that discussion of a 40-man roster spot protection, even though the actual number of players that's going to be protected is probably going to end up being closer to 5 or 6. That will be coming up on Friday, and we are planning to have a show in response to that that will either drop on Friday night or a normal time on Monday. We'll have more details leading up to that, but look for some reaction from us there. And I did want to go to Nick because Nick didn't get a full chance on our Rule 5 episode a couple weeks ago to really weigh in with his thoughts. So, Nick, I'm going to give you the floor here for a minute. Anything you want to impart on this about the Rule 5 draft and any thoughts on Kevin Smith or some of the guys on the bubble?
Hang on with my Kevin Smith thoughts. Join the Patreon. That episode's coming out soon, the Kevin Smith recap. No, I was actually going to ask you guys if your opinions had changed since that episode was recorded based on the roster moves and some AFL experiences. But yeah, I think DL Hall, Bradish locks, Taryn Vavra, I think is a lock. I am going to say Kevin Smith is protected. And for pretty much the point that you laid out in your article at BaltimoreSportsLife.com, they traded a major league piece for him. He was so dominant in AA. The new baseball, all the adjustments to AAA, maybe, they fired the pitching coach there. Maybe you bring Justin Ramsey up to AAA and you start Kevin Smith there, and maybe they can work on something with him. So they're not going to cut bait quite yet with him. For me, the interesting thing is going to be Robert Newstrom, and I think Nick Vespi. And I want to say Felix Bautista too. I want to protect all of these guys. Darn it. Bautista's a tough one because when you watch him, the walks were such an issue, a big issue for so long, but he throws it so hard and he strikes out so many guys. And just like Baker, we were talking about, he doesn't allow many base hits. Worked well with Adley Rutschman as well. I think they end up protecting Newstrom. That bat, when you watch those home runs, watching that home run at Dunkin' Donuts Park again, that 460-something foot home run, that's impressive. I think they protect him, and I think they should probably protect Nick Vespi too. Jonathan Mayo scared me, and I really like him.
I agree. I would add Nick Vespi to my list if I was redoing it now. So that would make it 6 with Bautista, Newstrom, Vavra, Hall, and Bradish. So, and Kevin Smith, I kind of hope they protect him because I think that's like a vote of confidence from the organization, and I think that means maybe they are confident that he can bounce back next year. But at the end of the day, I don't think if they could risk Zach Pop getting taken, I think they can risk Kevin Smith get taken.
I would say maybe not protecting Robert Newstrom, but going with Bautista and Vespi instead. If you think Newstrom's a tough one though, because do you think a team would really take an outfielder in this situation? I guess that's a good question. I feel like they'd be much more likely to take a guy like Felix Bautista and try to stash him away. But are you going to try to keep that bat in the lineup? I don't know. I'd probably take the gamble there and protect Bautista over Newstrom. But if we lost Robert Newstrom, he's gone forever. I'm crying. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I need them to protect him just because I need to see him hit the warehouse in an Orioles uniform. But that's a fair point. I mean, if you're playing the game, if you're trying to strategy it out, that could be an interesting move there.
What kind of adds another wrinkle to me for the Newstrom discussion is the likelihood of a DH in the National League, because that makes it easier to stick Newstrom on a roster and at least give him, say, half a season to see if he can figure it out. The reason that I keep going back to the fact that I think Newstrom will be protected is that how much longer of a lease does DJ Stewart really have, especially if you believe that Anthony Santander is going to get moved before the season ends. So it's possible that, you add Newstrom to the 40-man, knowing that if by Memorial Day, DJ Stewart has not put it together, and that Anthony Santander is going to be traded within the next 2 months, that there's your option to fill in that fourth, fifth outfielder, left-handed bat off the bench role and give you another guy to work with when Kyle Stowers gets there. So that's kind of what I go back to for Newstrom. Because I honestly wouldn't mind seeing them make a room for Patrick Dorian. But I think that Dorian's going to get iced out because of the number of corner infielders that are on the 40-man. Newstrom's in a similar spot that's kind of tough. But I feel like at the end of the day, they're going to find room for him. Vespi was a guy that, I'll be honest with you, when I started working on this piece at Baltimore Sports and Life, I wasn't planning to give him a lot of space just because it seemed like there were a lot of relievers that were in that bucket. But then by the time, in the days leading up to when this was published, it's like, all right, Vespi's got, out of those fall league guys, Vespi's the one that warrants the most discussion because fastball slider out of the bullpen, John Mayo hyping him up on the broadcast the other night, like Nick mentioned. That makes it, I think, more likely that someone would take a look at him out of the Rule 5 draft.
I mean, he is having the standout year in Arizona among Orioles prospects that are over there. And like they mentioned on the broadcast, all those other teams are watching every night. They've got scouts down there. They see how well he's pitching. And I mean, at the Fall Stars game, he walked the guy, but he didn't allow a hit, didn't allow a run. And he ended it with a strikeout of Juan Yepez, who has been like the darling of the Arizona Fall League. So, that raised some eyebrows. Guys are watching that. Teams are watching that. And so I think if the Orioles, that will tell us everything we need to know. If Vespi's protected, then that's a name to watch in 2022. The Orioles are clearly high on him, and they think he can be a contributor at the major leagues next year. If they don't protect him, then obviously they are not as impressed as we may be. But no Adam Hall. Adam Hall's not getting protected.
We'll see.
Joe Trezza says yes.
Yeah, Vespi's dominating the AFL. I think he's got an ERA around 2, so it's definitely, he's made an interesting case for himself. And quick note on DJ Stewart, I don't think he has a leash. I think they're just holding him by the collar and then ready to let him go at any time.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. So we will be back either late this week or early next week with a new episode reacting to the players that are protected from the Rule 5 draft. One thing to note is that our next show will not be live because we have to plan ahead for Thanksgiving and our holiday travels, as we know, as we're sure many of you are as well. But we will have a show next week or late this week reacting to the players that are protected from the Rule 5 draft and given 40-man roster spots. In the meantime, continue to follow us on Twitter at BSL and The Verge. Check out BaltimoreSportsAndLife.com for all the latest Orioles, Ravens, Terps, and sports coverage. Be sure to join the message board and hop on the discussion there. Before we wrap up for the week, Bob, Nick, any final thoughts?
Just congratulations again to Ryan Fuller. It was great news. I was hyped up when I saw that announcement, so love to see it, and hopefully we can do another interview with him from Camden Yards next season.
Yeah, definitely. Pay attention. We'll see what the Orioles think about all these guys that are Rule 5 eligible. We finally get some action, even if we get a month or two of quietness in the offseason. It's about to heat up for Baltimore. Waiver wire pickups and Rule 5 draft.
Yes.
This is the stuff we love.
Christmas season.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to tonight's episode, and we'll be back with a new episode either later this week or early next week. Until now, this has been Zach Spedden, and for Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, thank you for listening to On the Verge.